Well, hello, thank you for joining me again on the church history trail. And as you know, I've been going through my library and showing you some of my books and some of the books that have been a blessing to me over the years. And so I thought I would show you some of my booklets. So some of these booklets are new or newish, and some of them are old. And so we're going to start here with Spurgeon. And this is a catechism by Spurgeon. Charles Haddon Spurgeon, as you can see, a catechism with proofs. And so that's a wee booklet that Spurgeon wrote. And this one is 1985, so of course it's a reprint, it's not an original. And I'll just lift it and let you see that. And so that's the catechism. And as you can see, it shows you Spurgeon on the back, Charles Haddon Spurgeon, 1834 till 1892. And then there's another wee book here underneath, and it's this one here. Again, a newer book, but based on Spurgeon's writing, The Secrets of Men by Charles Haddon Spurgeon. And then it says The Finished Work of the Cross. And so that's that wee book there. And then the next one, and this book here has been a tremendous blessing to me. It's actually by Harry Ironside, as you can see. Harry H.A. Ironside, and that's for Harry, and it's the Holy Trinity. And this wee book by Ironside was actually printed in 1941. And so that's by Harry, and that's been a real blessing to me, that wee book. Then there's another book here by another famous author, and that's Bishop J.C. Ryle, the first Bishop of Liverpool. And shall we know one another in heaven? That's a good question, isn't it? I believe we will, because we're going to be like Jesus and we'll have perfect knowledge. And even in hell, the rich man recognised Abraham and the poor man Lazarus. And I believe we'll recognise each other in heaven. And then the next wee book is actually by an old Baptist, and this is Willie Mullen, and it's The Finest of the Wheat. And I have a couple of these wee books. This was printed in 1969, and as you can see, the first one is The Virgin Birth, and it's The Finest of the Wheat by William Mullen. And then the next one is Peter's Powerful Proclamation. Peter's Powerful Proclamation, and again by William Mullen, The Finest of the Wheat. And so there are two good wee books to have as well. And then I enjoyed this one as well, although I'm not a Calvinist, but I still enjoy reading about Calvinism and Arminianism. And I enjoyed this by Lorraine Butner, of course, is a big Calvinist of the Reformed faith. And you'll see the 5 points of Calvinism in this wee book here. And although I'm not a Calvinist, as I say, I still enjoyed reading that wee book. And then the next one, in fact, that wee book, that was printed in 1983. That one by Butner, the Reformed Faith. So that was 1983. Now this one here, this is by J. Oswald Sanders. Consider Him, and it's a 1976 booklet. And when he says consider Him, he's talking about consider Christ, not himself, of course. Consider Christ. It's taken from Hebrews, the book of Hebrews. Now, this one here is a very interesting booklet, because this booklet was actually based on a sermon. And it was a sermon by Jonathan Edwards, and it's Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Now, it was originally preached in 1741, but this edition here is 1992. And of course, Jonathan Edwards through the years has got a lot of flack for this message, but this message was a powerful message, and I'm going to read the back of the book to give you just a wee flavour of what was actually happening. And it says there, sinners in the hands of an angry God. On July 8th, 1741, Jonathan Edwards preached the most famous sermon ever delivered in the history of America. The response of the congregation was nothing short of amazing. Before Edwards could finish, people were moaning and crying out, "What shall I do to be saved?" Wow, that's what we need today again, don't we? And so that's a good wee book to have as well. And of course, Jonathan Edwards was part of the revival, wasn't he? And then here's another wee interesting book. And you've heard of Armageddon. Well, in the Hebrew, Armageddon's Megiddo. And so this is Megiddo. And our name for it is Armageddon. It says in the Hebrew Megiddo, and in the Greek it's Armageddon in the New Testament. And this wee book is actually by, and I'm going to try and pronounce this because I'm sure he's Hebrew himself, Jewish, Shemaiah ben David. And that wee book there was printed in 1979. And I actually got that wee book in a second-hand shop in Bombridge. So it was Tanya's wee shop, so we'll give Tanya from Bombridge and our husband Eddie, I'll give them a wee shout because that's where I got that wee book there, if I remember rightly. And then the next book is, this is a good author as well. You've heard me talk about him before, Brian Edwards. And I like Brian Edwards, he's very good. And it's Da Vinci, A Broken Code. He's dealing with the Da Vinci Code. And so that's a wee booklet on the Da Vinci Code. And then we have John Blanchard. This book here is Why We Believe the Bible. And so this is apologetic. In other words, it's defending the Christian faith. Why We Believe the Bible. And he done another one, Jesus, Dead or Alive. That's on the resurrection. And then he done another one too, which I liked, which is Evolution, Fact or Fiction. And so he's done some good wee books, John Blanchard wee booklets. And they're good wee booklets. And then the next author is John Stout. And I think that's the same, in fact it is the same as John Stout, who, if you remember the book I showed you on the birds, Let the Birds Be Our Teachers, it was him that wrote that one. And it was also him that wrote this wee booklet on abortion from a Christian perspective. And that actually wee booklet was printed in 1985. Sorry, 1985. So I seen the time when 1985 and the 1990s didn't seem all that long ago, but neither seem like they're a lifetime away. I think it's as you get older. Now, this wee book here, this is by Martin Luther, and it's Table Talk. And I actually picked this up in Wittenberg, in Luther's house. Well, it's based on Luther's house, but I got it in Wittenberg. I'm not sure actually what shop I got it in Wittenberg, but so I think it was actually before I went into his church I got it. But that's Luther would have had table talks. As you can see, that's Luther's we would probably call a parlour. And I've walked through that. It's like walking back in time. It's absolutely brilliant. That's one of the best rooms in the whole house. The house is now a museum. It was an Augustinian monastery, but it was given to Luther. And of course, Luther didn't live there on his own. Not only did Luther's family live there, but it was packed with ex-nuns and priests, people who were on the run from the church. And in the table talks, Luther would have met with learned men and talked with them. But anybody of the public could just walk in and sit down and listen to the debates and the discussions. And so it was an open table as such. And so that's Luther's table talk. And then these wee booklets here, there's 3 of these wee booklets. And I haven't been able to get a date for these. But as you can see from the information on them, that says price 3p, or 3p as some people would say. And I think that was done away with in 1972, if I remember rightly. So I'm not sure where this was published in the early 1900s or the late 1800s. But it's 3p anyway. And this wee book then, it was a couple of them were by James Scott, and also in connection with the Scottish Prophetical Council. And so they're end times booklets, but as you can see, they're a right wee age, and they're from a dispensational point of view, a framework. And so that one is an outline of prophetic events, and I've read these, are absolutely brilliant. And that one there is the Prophetic and Advent Catechism. And if you can see there in the back, it's actually printed by Pickering and Ingalls, and I've just learned out today when I actually checked out that that was actually a brethren, owned by a brethren man, or brethren people. And so it would seem that they were a brethren company, or at least they had connections with the brethren movement. And that one is the Prophetic and Advent Catechism. And then this one here, the last one, and I had a wee bit of sticky tape on this one. This is the promise of his coming and why he delayed. And that's by James Scott. And that reminds us that the Lord's coming, because when the Lord makes a promise, he keeps it, doesn't he? And so that's the wee booklets. And then this wee booklet here is a fantastic wee booklet as well, because it deals with the Irish Reformation. And of course, the Irish Reformation, it really didn't kick in until the time of Queen Elizabeth I. And so the Reformation during the time of Henry's, the 8th period of the 16th century, was really a failure in Ireland. It really never kicked in at all until the time of Queen Elizabeth I, which of course was Henry VIII's daughter. And this wee booklet is actually wrote by the Reverend Jordan. And if I remember rightly, he was from Cork. And it was wrote in 1932. So it's a right wee age of a booklet. It was wrote in 1932 and price £1. And as you can see the date, 1932. And it's Reverend Canon G.V. Jordan, D.D., Rector of St. Mary, Shandon, Cork. And it's the Reformation in Ireland in the 16th century. And as I say, it was a failure, the Reformation, up until the time of Elizabeth I. Now, if you're from Northern Ireland, you'll know the next author and his wee booklets, because it's the Reverend Ian Paisley. And Paisley here done one on Patrick, the Apostle of Ireland. And as you can see, it's by the Reverend Ian Paisley. And that's Slamish Mountain, which is really a volcanic plug. That's basically what that is. But that's his wee book on Patrick. And then this is Paisley here. And he wrote this book himself. Now, I'm not sure where that's printed or where that's his actual signature, but it could be his actual signature and then just copied to the rest of the booklets. I'm not sure if he done this actually personally by hand, this particular booklet. But it says the 4 windows of life. And that's Luther as a boy. Or sorry, Paisley as a boy. That's Ian Paisley as a boy. And then the next one is maturity. Or at least youth. The next one's maturity. And then sunset. So you have Ian Paisley in childhood as a youth, maturity, and then sunset. Now, he was about 57 with that photograph there. And some of his kids tell him, when he said to some of his kids that he was old, he felt old, he was getting old, because he was near 60, and they thought he was kidding him. They says, you're fooling us, Dad. Of course, when Paisley said that he was old, at 57, near 60, he didn't die till he was 88. I think it was 88 he died at. So when he was 60, he had 28 years more to go. But there are nice wee pictures there of a minister and politician here from Northern Ireland who's now deceased. And his last wee booklet is Some Kid, but definitely no goat. And this was actually a wee booklet that, in fact, there's another one as well. And this is a wee booklet that he actually wrote on the Reverend Kidd from Aberdeen, as you can see. Dr. Kidd of Aberdeen. The story of the witty, the learned, and the eccentric, and the controversial. And I'll show you the wee inscription inside of him, because it's a good wee inscription there, as you can see. And so that's a good wee print. And I have to be honest, I'd never heard of Dr. Kidd until I got this wee book, to be honest. But there you are. And then the last wee book is The Crown Rights of Jesus Christ. And there might be a photo on the back of this one. There is. And so there you are. That's the Rev Ian Paisley. And then the next booklet, and we're almost finished with this section. The next booklet is actually this one here, and this is a new booklet, newish, and it's the Jewish people and the gospel, and it's actually two sermons that are reproduced. One is by C.H. Spurgeon, and the other one by the famous evangelist Robert Murray McCheyne. And of course, C.H. Spurgeon was a pastor, a teacher, an evangelist, and he was well known. And these two men were great men of God. And so they're writing on the Jewish people and the gospel in that wee booklet. And then this wee booklet here I actually picked up in Wittenberg as well. And basically what it is Martin Luther's 95 Theses. And as you can see, he's nailing them to the door of the Castle Church at Wittenberg. And I'll try and open this wee booklet for you and let you see just a wee bit inside. So that there is the theses, the 95 Theses itself. That's the whole thesis. As you can see, I'll read the last one out. And thus hope with confidence and enter heaven through many mercies rather than in false security. And that was Martin Luther. And that's what he nailed. There's the actual, that's the actual church, but it's not the actual doors. Although the doors were burnt down in the Middle Ages. But the door actually itself, when it was, the doors there, when they replaced the old doors, they actually had the 95 Theses printed on the doors. So if you actually go there and look at the doors, you'll see the 95 Theses on them. And of course, Luther himself is buried in that church. That's the Castle Church at Wittenberg. And then this man here is the last one, and this is the Reverend Henry Cook. And of course, I've done a wee video on Henry Cook and his church at Killalay in another wee video. And so that will do us in this session, and I'll do a few more wee videos, at least one anyway, and I'll show you a few more wee booklets and some of the collections that I have. God bless.